Thank you, Samana. This Texas law is turning neighbors against neighbors. President Biden said it right. I quote, complete strangers will now be empowered to inject themselves in the most private and personal health decision faced by women, unquote. To discuss that with us today is someone who has been president of National Lawyers Guild, uh, Marjorie Cohn. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
My pleasure, Malik. Thanks for having me.
Marjorie Cohn is a professor emerita at the Thompson Jefferson School of Law. What is happening? This Texas law, Marjorie, seems to be turning neighbors against neighbors, but they have given a sweet name, Texas Heartbeat Law. I mean, who could be against heart and who could be against heartbeat?
Well, even that is a misnomer because this law empowers private people to bring lawsuits against their neighbors, against doctors, nurses, clergy persons, family members, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, anyone who aids and abets a woman in having an abortion. And these people who are aiders and abettors don't even have to know that the woman is going to have an abortion. And the heartbeat comes in that when a doctor knows or should know there's some cardiac activity, it doesn't even have to be a heartbeat, and it usually happens around 6 weeks, that's when neighbors can sue neighbors. Now, keep in mind, Malik, this does not outlaw abortion. What this law does is to outlaw safe abortions, because women are going to continue to have abortions. Women are going to be raped. They're going to be victims of incest, and they are going to have abortions whether this law is in effect or not. But what the law does is to punish women who go to clinics where they can receive safe abortions. It does punish the women, even though they're not defendants in the lawsuits, because it makes it so difficult for women to get abortions because people who help them, doctors, nurses, family members, are liable for $10,000 plus attorney's fees if their neighbors or other people sue them. And so it does end up hurting women. It's really an anti-woman law. Women are going to go back to back alley abortions, coat hanger abortions. Women are going to die from abortions. That's what's going to happen with this law. And it's going to pit neighbors against neighbors. And it's basically bribery. The Texas legislature is bribing private vigilantes to sue people who help women get abortions. So it won't prevent abortions. It will just prevent unsafe abortions. It will prevent safe abortions. It will lead to more unsafe abortions.
So if a Lyft, some woman calls a Lyft or Uber, that woman, he's giving right, and he or she, a driver who might be, have no idea who they are giving right to and for what purpose, but they can be sued.
Exactly. They don't even have to know that they're dropping a woman off at a clinic where she is going to get an abortion, or maybe even an appointment to talk about her options when she isn't even necessarily going to get an abortion, but the Uber driver or Lyft driver could be charged under this new law with aiding and abetting a woman who eventually gets an abortion. So plus the fact that it encourages websites such as this Texas Right to Life website from putting up things that encourage people to basically snitch and inform on each other. And there has been some pushback. GoDaddy, which is a platform, has said that Right to Life cannot be doing that. It actually had to take down their website because one of the terms of service is that they don't put up information without a person's consent. So there is some pushback, and also a judge in Austin on the third of September, 2 days after this law went into effect, stopped the law from going into effect, just as between this Texas Right to Life group and Planned Parenthood. It only affects them. So until there's a hearing on a preliminary injunction, which I believe is on September 13th, Texas Right to Life cannot facilitate these lawsuits against Planned Parenthood.
But Professor Cohen, what I'm concerned about is beyond the abortion and non-abortion debate. What about the Uber driver and taxi driver and Lyft driver simply stop giving right to women for any purpose?
That's true. I mean, there may be Lyft drivers and Uber drivers, taxi drivers who won't pick up any women anymore because men don't get abortions. So they could just pick up men. Now, the companies, Lyft and Uber, have said that they would pay the $10,000 and the attorney's fees if any of their employees get sued, because they don't want to lose business. And so that is some incentive for Lyft drivers and Uber drivers to continue to drive. But there are a lot of other people. Let's say that a woman goes to her minister or her priest or her imam to talk about her options, and ultimately she does have an abortion. That clergy person can be sued under this law. And if the clergy person loses, that clergy person has to pay $10,000 plus attorney's fees, which can really mount up into the tens of thousands of dollars under this new law. And so it really deputizes citizens to become anti-abortion police. It's a very dangerous law. And as I said, it's not going to stop abortions. It's just going to stop safe abortions.
Marjorie, but also Texas is also the, let's call it a country where people can carry a gun without a license. So what I'm seeing is there are going to be vigilante who say, well, I don't care for 10,000. Let me take care of this woman myself with my gun.
That's the next step. You know, Texas is also a state where the legislature just passed and the governor just signed a voter suppression law, making it much harder for people of color, for poor people, for all kinds of people, Native American people, to vote. They are trying to put up obstacles to voting because they're afraid of the will of the people. And so Texas is really, as you say, it's like another country. And this is not surprising, but it's very disturbing. And even more disturbing, Malik, is the fact that 5 members of the U.S. Supreme Court let this law go into effect without considering it, without a hearing, without briefing, without oral argument. They just let it go into effect. 3 of those 5 members of the Supreme Court were appointed by Donald Trump specifically to overturn Roe versus Wade, and they're on their way to doing that. Now, this decision did not overturn Roe versus Wade, but it's a good indication that that will happen next term, and the new term of the Supreme Court starts the first Monday in October. They will be considering a case for Mississippi, which outlaws abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And that case asks the Supreme Court to overturn Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade gives a woman a constitutional right to an abortion until a baby becomes viable. In other words, until a baby can survive outside the womb. And but that decision may well be overturned next term when the Supreme Court meets. And this law is so far out that even Chief Justice Roberts, who is a conservative, he's a right-winger, he voted with the 3 remaining liberals to get briefing, see what the lower courts say, take their time instead of rushing in. And also, John Roberts is concerned with the legacy of the Roberts Court. He wants to make sure that it has perceived legitimacy, that it's not perceived as a railroad, an unfair court. And so he has that interest as well. But since Ruth Bader Ginsburg died and she was replaced by a right-winger, Amy Coney Barrett, during the Trump administration, they have the votes to overturn Roe versus Wade. And if Roe versus Wade is overturned, then state after state, the red states, the conservative states, are going to pass laws very much like this Texas law. And that means that more and more women will have unsafe abortions. More and more women will die. They will be maimed. They will be injured.
Why people, Professor Cohn, who otherwise are not in support of abortions as a personal choice for themselves for religious reasons or other reasons, is there a reason for those people to be worried about this type of law?
It is a reason because once they start on this path, who knows where it will end up? And the government will start legislating all of our behavior and get our neighbors to inform on us like vigilantes and set up lawsuits where we can lose $10,000 plus attorney's fees. Plus the fact that no one, I don't think, wants women to be maimed and die. And that's what this is going to lead to. As I said, it's not going to end abortion. It's going to end unsafe. It's going to end safe abortions. And so I think that people who are concerned about life, and we're talking right to life, not just the right to life of a fetus, but the right to life of a baby once a baby's born, the right to health care, the right to education, the right to be treated as a human being. Many people, and I'm not talking about people, Muslims, but I know a lot of evangelical Christians are much more concerned about the life of the fetus than they are the life of the baby who is born. They're against social services.
And life of mother as well.
And the life of mother as well. You're talking about pro-life. Yes, we're talking about the life of mother. Exactly.
So, Marjorie, take our audience to the era when women will die in alleys and maimed because they did not have any health services available to them.
That's true. That's true, because we do not have universal health care in this country. We're the only industrialized country that doesn't have universal health care. But under this law, girls as young as 13 or 12 can be raped by strangers, by family members, and they will be forced to have the baby. If that's the intent of this law, which means that will put their health at risk as well. So yes, talking about right to life, we need to have a very expansive view of the right to life beyond just the right to life of an unborn fetus.
Isn't rape very common phenomena in our country? And the result of rape, this law covers that as well. So how common is rape, and how common is the situation in which women does not want to have to carry a burden of a rapist?
That's true. Rape is all too common in this country, and incest as well. I used to work I was a criminal defense lawyer and represented parents and children whose children were taken away from them because of molest and neglect. It's very, very common. And yes, I mean, imagine, it's hard to imagine, but imagine being a 13-year-old girl who is raped by your stepfather, and you want to have an abortion and you can't because there's nobody to help you. Your family won't help you. Your priest or your imam is afraid to help you because they might get sued under this law. There's no one to help you. What is that girl going to do? And when that girl does go through childbirth, she might die. And so she might be desperate, and she might have a friend or a friend of a friend who takes her to a place where they're unsanitary, where they use things like coat hangers, and I'm not exaggerating. And she dies from the abortion because it's unsafe and it's unsterile, because she does not have the opportunity to get a safe abortion. Now, what this is going to mean is that women who have money, rich women in Texas, can fly to California and get a safe medical abortion. But poor women, it's going to affect poor women more than rich women because they don't have the resources to travel to a state where safe abortion is legal. And they're the ones who are going to be the victims of these back alley coat hanger abortions. This is what happened before Roe versus Wade was decided in 1973. Many women were dying from unsafe, illegal abortions. And that's what we're going to go back to if this law is allowed to stand, and if Roe versus Wade ultimately is overruled by the Supreme Court.
You know, Senate and House now have a resolution which is supported and co-sponsored by a whole lot of people. It's called the Women Health Protection Act of 2021. What are the chances of its becoming law in this situation in which, it's an issue on which country is divided and not in communication across the aisle? Do you think there is a possibility that it will pass when, filibuster is in place?
Well, yes, this law would legalize into law Roe versus Wade. So it would make Roe versus Wade the law in a federal statute. And it has a lot of support. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, is going to bring it to the floor for a vote after the summer recess is over. But this is not an issue that breaks down just along party lines, Republican versus Democrat. There are many Republicans who favor the right of women to have control over their own bodies and to make health choices for themselves without interference by the state. So it is not at all clear that this law will not pass, although it's going to be very tight because of the filibuster, which requires not just a majority of 51 senators out of 100, but rather 60 senators. So it's going to be very close. And there is a lot of political pressure surrounding this law, but it does have a chance, albeit a slim chance, of passing.
Now, the filibuster reform, there was a call because of, multiple reasoning. This is probably going to add to that. And the courts, although Judge Roberts have said that, well, we should hear this and all that, but he's a conservative as well. So if the due process is followed, he might support that as well. So Supreme Court has been a part of the debate and the discussion as well. So it seems like the whole lot of things are being piled up on the political process of the United States Congress. Do you see any reform in the area of filibuster taking place?
Well, you're right about that, but there's another option too, and that is to expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court. There are now 9 justices. There have been more or less in the past. The Constitution doesn't say how many justices there must be. And so there have been calls to expand the number of justices from 9 to, say, 13, which would dilute the influence of these radical right-wingers on the court. And it's not just about abortion. It's about voting rights and religious rights and rights of immigrants, civil rights, rights of people of color, rights of workers, rights of women. There are many rights at stake here. So it is possible. There are calls for expanding the number of justices on the Supreme Court. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was trying to get his New Deal legislation through, and back in the 30s, the late 30s, and the Supreme Court was split 5-4. The right-wingers were in the majority. And so he tried to do what was called court packing and expand the number of justices. And finally, one of those 5 conservatives started voting with the liberals to uphold the New Deal legislation, which was social services, making lives better for people, giving them jobs, etc. And so Roosevelt never did expand the number of justices on the Supreme Court, but many people say that he lost the battle but won the war because his New Deal program was allowed to go through after that right-wing justice changed his vote and voted with the 4 liberals in the majority.
Well, thank you so much, Marjorie Cohn, for your time.
My pleasure, Malik. Thanks for having me.
Samana, abortion is a topic on which Muslims need to think. Muslim, by and large, because of our faith, teaches us killing one human being is like killing a whole humanity. Muslims are, by and large, anti-abortion. At the same time, the people who stand up against the Muslim ban are women of America, who also demand the right of safe abortion. So Muslims have a dilemma and a dialogue which need to take place. In Islam, there is no sex outside marriage. But in America, 95% people have sex without marriage. That's 95% of our neighbors. How do we deal with that situation? Especially there are, according to CDC, and trust me, they deal with these numbers, not just pandemic, 1,498,113 live birth to unmarried women. So this is the country which we are dealing with. And in that situation, there are 463,000 rapes in this country. To be exact, 463,634 rapes. Do Muslims want a woman who have been raped to carry that child? Some of them are 13, 14-year-olds. Sometimes it is the stepfather who is raping a girl. So the whole societal system is designed in a way which need to be taken into consideration before Muslims join the bandwagon of anti-abortion or pro-life. We're looking for a new system in which people get married and take responsibility of children. But in the absence of that, what can we do? So sorry about this longer conversation. Back to you, Samana.